Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. One of the most basic safeguards of any democratic nation is a thing called division of powers. Powers are handed to those in authority, but those authorities are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Each is of itself and is independent from the others. This is an important safeguard. It is what basically keeps us a democracy. No one person or one party can impose illegal acts of law on a nation without some form of coverage from each of the other two branches. It's a safety valve. It stops chaos. It stops anarchy. And it most certainly stops dictatorship. Any country that forces one branch to be subjected to the whims of another ceases at that moment to be an effective democracy and does indeed become a dictatorship. And so it comes as no surprise, of course, that that's exactly what the SNP are attempting to bring in. And people are rejecting it. And we're going to take a look at this and see why they're rejecting it, even the judges now. And to see the irony that it happens to be the SNP that are attempting to bring it in. Here goes. So judges now join the backlash at Humza Yousaf's plans to bring Scots courts under political control. The senators of the College of Justice say the SNP reforms would give ministers the power to control lawyers and leave Scotland's legal system wide open to political abuse. You could have a position where, let's say, a judge wants to make a ruling, but the case is very controversial and it may be damaging to the government if the judge rules, let's say, yes, guilty or lawful. The government could then imply and put power on the judge to change his verdict. So that therefore, at that moment, that judgment isn't a judicial judgment, it is a political decision. And if that judgment was one that would go against the government, it means the government could basically do what it liked, and there would be no way of taking the government to court over this because the government controls the court. This is insidious. This is unlawful. And this act alone, this attempt alone, should instantly force the British government at Westminster to rescind the Parliament Act of Scotland and bring the whole edifice down and remove the Scottish Parliament from existence. Because at that moment it ceases to be a parliament and it becomes a dictatorship. To have the courts controlled by the government is little more than what the likes of Idi Amin in Uganda did in the 70s, or Pol Pot, or Rwanda, any of these Central African republics, any of these sort of terrible failed nation states. And why does he want this? Why does Humza Yousaf want complete and utter control of the courts? It's because if he can control the legal system, he can ensure that whatever the SNP do, or any of its ministers or past ministers do, they can never, ever be held to account. That's what this is for. And it is, of course, completely wrong. And this is ironic because this is coming at a time when the SNP itself is under investigation from the police. And now they want control of the courts so that they can control the outcome of trials. That's Humza Yousaf. It may be acceptable in where he comes from, but it's certainly not acceptable here. The SNP plans to bring Scotland's legal profession under political control and have provoked an extraordinary backlash from judges. They have warned the proposals threaten judicial independence and leave the system open to political abuse. And we can see that that is quite clearly so. The Regulation of Legal Services Scotland Bill was lodged earlier this year, and the power grab, which has been described as making Scotland akin to Belarus, would give ministers unprecedented and wide-ranging powers to interfere with the country's courts. It is being examined by MSPs on Holyrood's Equality, Human Rights and Civil Justice Committee, and papers published over the weekend show the scale of the opposition. Every single Scot, every single citizen needs to fight this. You could be taken to court for something. There, you could actually have an absolute legal defence. But a phone call from a minister could say, no, we need this guy to be guilty. We need to set an example. And you could be made guilty. The judge would have the right to throw out evidence or not allow you to present evidence in your mitigation because he's been told to by his political overlords. Imagine that. Well, you don't have to imagine. Just look at any third world dictatorship. The senators of the College of Justice said the changes would give ministers the power to control lawyers, including those acting against them, strip oversight powers from the Court of Session, and impose themselves as a co-regulator. The judges added, an independent legal profession and an independent judiciary is central to the rule of law. The protection of the public from the arbitrary abuse of power by the state absolutely depends on it. Now, in America, they have the Second Amendment, and we all know what that is, yeah? The Bang Bang Amendment. Now, that was brought in not to enable people to protect themselves from other people. That was brought in for one reason, and one reason only. Those items of the mentioned in the Second Amendment, that amendment and those items were designed specifically to be pointed at the government, to stop government from imposing illegal or wrong laws on the people. That's what the Founding Fathers in America decided. The only way to stop a government from doing this would be to make sure the people have the option to reject that government totally. And they have used it. And we need something like that in this country, because if this comes in, the only protection in law you have is to physically have a revolution, because you cannot go to the courts, because effectively there will be no courts. The courts are just simply another arm of government. So where do you go to get justice? Well, justice must come, therefore, from civil action. These people are so stupid. The judges added, an independent legal profession and an independent judiciary is central to the rule of law, as I just mentioned. They said the protection of the public from the arbitrary abuse of power of the state depends on it. Political regulation of the legal profession is not appropriate. It's not right, it's immoral, it's unethical, and it's certainly not wanted. These proposals are a threat to the independence of the legal profession and the judiciary. It is of critical constitutional importance that there is a legal profession which is willing and able to stand up for the citizen against the government of the day. Remove that and no one can stand up to the government. And we've seen time and time again where citizens and people and groups have gone to court, have fought against the government and won, because some of the things the government have tried to bring in have been deemed unlawful. And that's what upsets the Scottish government. They don't like being shown that virtually everything they do ends up going to court and being unlawful. And so if they can control the court, they can control the country. The spokesman continued, the judiciary is fundamentally opposed to this attempt to bring the legal profession under political control. If this bill is passed in its current form, Scotland will be viewed internationally as a country whose legal system is open to political abuse. They say that if approved, lawyers would become open to politically motivated reprisals from politicians if they acted against the government or choose to defend certain clients. Imagine being told that you're not allowed, as a defence lawyer, that you're not allowed to represent that individual or that group of individuals or that company because the government don't want that group, that individual or that company to be represented. It's astonishing, but that's the power grab the SNP are after. Bodies representing lawyers have been outraged by the planned overhaul of how the legal system is regulated. The plans, part of the Regulation of Legal Services Scotland Bill, would see ministers hand themselves unprecedented powers to interfere in the regulation of the profession. Currently, the profession is regulated by the Lord President, Scotland's most senior judge. Other bodies to criticise the plans are the Law Society of Scotland, the Faculty of Advocates, and the International Bar Association. So basically, everyone who's a player in the legal profession, both in Scotland, in the United Kingdom, and around the world, are saying this is bad. When you go to some third world country that has a better legal profession because it's independent than Scotland, whose history of judicial reviews, whose history of justice is one amongst the best and most reputable in the world, and you're dragging it down to worse than some third world countries, you've got to ask, what is wrong with these people? And why has this only come up after Humza Yousaf has come to power and he was the previous Justice Minister? He knew how bad it was. This granting of powers to a Scottish government is, I mean, it's exceptional. It's beyond any kind of norm. There's nowhere in the world that is a functioning democracy that will allow this. And yet this bunch want it. It must be stopped. It must be rejected. And again, if it goes through, this is one where Westminster must again apply Section 35. And he'll take that one to the courts, will he? Because I can guarantee, without a doubt, he will lose. I'm coming up. It's becoming Stalin-esque, isn't it? You're effectively creating, in Humza Yousaf, the judge, the jury and the executioner based on the laws that he would impose by diktat, effectively. This is not only just a retrograde step, it is a step back. I literally, when I said it is Stalin-esque, I just thought about it. It actually, truly is. There is no defence. He can say what's what. He can say, right, we're going to introduce this, we're going to do that. Right. And you've got no recourse in law. You've got nothing. And they can just send the police round and arrest you. And it's a show trial because he's already decided that you're guilty. Wheel in the guilty bastard. Okay, you're guilty, 5 years. But Your Honour, I wasn't there. Doesn't matter. I've got a quota to fill. Bang, away. And that's how it could be. There's nothing stopping them. You know, I've been told I've got to fulfil this. I've got to fulfill this. This has come because of the low number of R cases of women not going through, and so they want to impose these rules so that they can increase the number of men going to prison for this crime and doing it basically a road system because we must get 30% in prison. Okay, well there's enough doubt in this one. No, he's got to go to prison. And this is coming on high. This is where it's going. There's no more justice. It's not. What's the point of having a judiciary system? Let's just let Humza Yousaf do it. This has to be resisted. And if needs be, it has to be on the streets resistance. It has to be, let's take the fight to their house resistance. I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this one has enraged you enough to hit the subscribe button because this has enraged me. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and for heaven's sake, fight this one all the way. Goodbye.